welcome back to Atreyu News. This is kind of a re-upload as it was brought to my attention by one of my loyal subscribers. Wish to throw a thanks out to them. Anyways, let's get into it. Marine Le Pen does President Trump proud and completely destroys her opponent. If Mr. Macron fears and does not feel at ease with the debate, he can always ask Francois Hollande to come and hold his hand. She's a powerhouse. And as she skyrockets in the polls, I see the globalists really freaking out, much like they did when they knew Trump had a real shot to win the country. Breaking: major military asset deployed to Korean Peninsula. The U.S. has deployed a RQ-4 Global Hawk drone to spy on North Korean military communications. That thing is intimidating. It's amazing the mechanized, unmanned machinery that the Allies now possess. Humans don't even have to step on the battlefield. Well, from our side anyway. The U.S. Air Force deployed a RQ-12 Global Hawk high-altitude surveillance drone at Yokota Air Base on Monday night, starting a 5-month operation in Tokyo, Japan. Times reports. The drone, the first of 5 to arrive in Japan, is tasked to survey ballistic missiles and nuclear facilities in North Korea, and is part of the 69th Reconnaissance Group detached. Global Hawks do not have offensive capabilities. Its mission is to provide near real-time aerial imagery reconnaissance support to U.S. and partner nations. According to the base's website, 4 more Global Hawks are slated to be deployed to the base, and a total of 110 staff members, including mechanics, are set to be stationed there in a related move. According to Japan's Defense Ministry, the drone is capable of capturing aerial images and electronic data from an altitude of around 50,000 feet. That's up there. Higher than the altitude at which commercial aircraft typically fly. The drone will be controlled by remote from Yokota during takeoff and landing, and then from the U.S. mainland once it reaches a sufficient altitude. Isn't that most impressive? You can control a drone across the entire world by remote control. In the past, Global Hawks have been deployed at the U.S. Misawa Air Base in the northern prefecture of Omori, but work to revamp the runway at Misawa led to the switch to Yokota, where the command of U.S. forces in Japan is located. To boost its own defense capabilities, Japan's defense ministry decided to introduce 3 of them for self-defense forces, and will start deploying one at Misawa at the end of the fiscal 2019. This rotational development of the Global Hawk is temporary, but necessary to provide a base from which the platform can be reliably operated during the summer. The U.S. Pacific Command announced last month, adding that the U.S. continues to deploy its most advanced capabilities to Japan, including the Global Hawk, and keeping our commitment to further contribute to the security of Japan and to the stability of the region. Elsewhere, the Maritime Self-Defense Force helicopter carrier Izumo joined a U.S. Navy vessel at sea on Monday in the first protection mission enabled by security legislation that took effect last year, and has expanded the role of the self-defense forces, Japan. Times reported. Japan-U.S. cooperation comes amid rising tensions over North Korea, which continues to develop nuclear weapons and ballistic missile technology in defiance of the United Nations Security Council resolutions. The cooperation between the 2 militaries comes days after Japanese fighter jets joined American aircraft for joint drills in waters off Okinawa, amid heightened tensions with North Korea. On Monday night, President Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe also held an informal telephone call on Monday. The conversation was held on Monday morning, Japan time, and lasted about 30 minutes. According to the sources, no announcement of the talks was made by the Japanese government, a rarity for such events. The call followed 3 formal telephone meetings last month, all of which focused on the increasing threat posed by North Korea. Japan's foreign ministry reiterated caution to journalists, urging them to refrain from visiting North Korea as part of Tokyo's unilateral sanctions against Pyongyang that have been in place since February 2016. Amid rising tensions, many reporters traveled to the reclusive state to cover a military parade on April 15th. Man, that thing's awesome looking. Watch Mick Mulvaney explain the brilliance of Trump in the budgetary process. Mike blasts Democrats for claiming victory on spending bill. Let's take a listen.
Thank you for being here. Sean said I can't do this, but today is my anniversary. So my wife is actually watching this for a change. Hey, Pam, I love you very much. It's my 19th anniversary. Good. We got that out of the way. And believe me, I wish I were home and not here, but as much as I enjoy you people. Well, when you can't be home for your anniversary, you do it.
It's just a hopeless romantic.
Those of you who know me know that it's a miracle that I've been married to anybody for 19 years. So we're here today to talk about the bipartisan spending bill. Okay, and I want to focus on that on that description first before we go into the details. A lot of folks have asked us over the course of the last 24, 48 hours, with Republicans in charge of the House and the Senate and the White House, why do we need a bipartisan spending bill? And one of the things I think is not being discussed as openly as it should is that this is one of those bills that requires 60 votes in the Senate. So it's not like the health care bill. We have to have at least 8 Democrats support this in the Senate, which is why we've been working with Democrats from the very beginning. Yes, we could have passed a Republican bill only out of the House, but it never would have passed out of the Senate, and then we would have been accused of not being able to function and run the government. So there's a very good reason that we've been working with Democrats on a bipartisan bill, and that is because we must. And until those rules change, that's the environment that we're going to continue to operate in. The Dems have been trying to claim victory on this, which I think is a very strange way to look at a bipartisan discussion. If you're in a bipartisan meeting, I think it's very unusual for one group to walk out and start spiking the football and say, hey, we won, we killed the other guys, and it certainly doesn't bode very well for future discussions. But since the Democrats have raised the issue and tried to cast this as Democrat victory, I think it's important today and only fair to show you what's really in the bill and how the President actually cut a tremendous deal for the American people. At the end of the day, that's who we think won in this discussion, in this negotiation, not the Democrats, not the Republicans, but the American people. First, the list of things that Republicans got in the negotiation. You've heard a bunch of different numbers about the top-line defense number. I've heard as low as $10 or $12.5 billion. The number is $21 billion. Okay? That is what the additional defense spending is, $21 billion. That's made up of 2 numbers. $15 billion in a standalone OCO, Overseas Contingency Operation account, and another $6 billion that is hardwired into the underlying DoD appropes bill. Remember, this is an omnibus bill, which means it's made up of different appropriations bills. One of those bills that becomes part of the omnibus is the defense appropriations bill, and in that bill is $6 billion worth of OCO spending. So you take the 6 that's in the underlying bill, the 15 that was added as the supplemental, and that's how you arrive at the $21 billion. The $12.5 billion number is wrong. The $15 billion number is wrong. You could talk about a number as high as $25 billion if you wanted to compare it to FY 2016. But you could never go below $21 billion in that analysis, which is a full 2/3 of what we'd asked for in the beginning. I'm going to talk a little bit more later on about the DHS number, the $1.522 billion of additional spending, by the way. That's not all of the spending on border security. The total DHS number by the time we're finished will be north of $42 billion. Okay, one of the largest funding levels for border security in the last 10 years is what we'll have at the end of this process. That's where this negotiation has taken us, to the largest spending on border security in 10 years. We'll go over the details of that in a second. Miners' health, one of my favorites. So the Democrats walked out of the room and said they protected the miners' health. Okay, so did the President. The President is asking me since the day I got here for a way to fix the miners' health issue problems that they have in Appalachia. And we were simply waiting for the opportunity to give it as part of a bipartisan discussion so that we could get something in return. We mark this as one of our victories in this particular bill. Every single Second Amendment protection that we wanted and the Democrats wanted to get rid of is still in the bill. Every single pro-life protection that we wanted to keep in the bill and the Democrats wanted out is gone. Okay? And most importantly, and those of you in this room and the folks who take the time to watch this during the day, understand this and follow this business fairly closely. We broke parity. Okay? And for those of you who've been covering this area for a long time, know what that means. It means in the past several years, ever since the spending caps came on, ever since the sequester went in, there was this unwritten deal on Capitol Hill, which is for every dollar of defense spending that the Republicans wanted, they had to give $1 worth of non-defense spending to the Democrats. That was the deal that President Obama was able to cut during his last years in office. We got $21 billion of new defense spending for less than $5 billion of non-defense spending. Okay? We didn't go dollar for dollar. We got $1 of spending and only gave 20 cents worth of non-defense discretionary. That's a tremendous development for this president and a huge win from a negotiating standpoint. Okay? Think about that for a second. We've gone from a dollar to a dollar for just 20 cents. And plus, part of that $4.5 billion is stuff that we like. So the minor's health is included in that number. So even some of the stuff that we gave away, supposedly, to get the defense spending was stuff that we liked in the first place. What didn't the Democrats get? There's no Obamacare bailout money in this package. I've read that in the newspapers a couple different times. I've seen it on the news. Go find it for me. It is not there. What the Democrats are telling you about that is false. There's absolutely no language in this bill that requires us to make any Obamacare bailout payments, any CSR payments of any way, shape, or form as a result of this deal. Okay? Why are the Democrats saying that? Because it's what they told their base they would deliver, and they failed to do that for their base. That is not in the bill. There's no new money for Puerto Rico. You hear the Democrats crying out that they got $295 million for Puerto Rico. Not a penny of it is new money. Okay? All of that money was already spent. It was actually part of Obamacare under a previous agreement. That money was sitting there unspent, and all we agreed to do was agree to let them move it from one place to another. Did not cost the taxpayer a penny. They wanted new money. They wanted a bailout. We wouldn't give it to them. We gave them money that was already appropriated and already spent. There's no renewable energy subsidies. They wanted, at the last minute, they threw in a demand for renewable energy subsidies for wind and solar and other types of things. We kept those out. What they really didn't get is this. And this is what they wanted. They wanted a shutdown. We know that. They were desperate to make this administration look like we couldn't function, like we couldn't govern. And we know that a large part of their base, especially their left-wing base, wanted a shutdown and certainly didn't want them to cut a deal with us. That's why I think you're seeing them crowing about their success, is in order to cover up the fact that they actually cut a deal with President Trump, and President Trump did a tremendous job. What are we talking about? More money for spending, more money for defense, more money for border security, more money for school choice, another thing that we got. Okay? Those of you who were here in March and saw me introduce our first version of our budget blueprint, saw me talk about the President's priorities. What were they? Defense, border security, school choice. The President delivered on his promises and got his priorities funded, and that's what the Democrats don't want you to know. They want you to think they won. What they don't want you to know is the American people won here because the President simply out-negotiated them. I want to come back to one thing, then I'll take some questions. If I can bring the pictures up now, that would be great.
Wow, that was surprisingly informative, impressive. There's some stuff I didn't even know about that. Well, that's good news then. I look forward to watching this guy. Hopefully he makes more press conferences, as I enjoyed that thoroughly.